Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to First Tuesday. I'm Jamie Prenkert, the Dean of the Carlson School, and it's exciting to gather together with you today for what's sure to be an informative and educational hour. Of course, it comes at a difficult time. I want to acknowledge the recent news of one of our international students being detained. We're doing all we can to support them and to respect their request for privacy. The Carlson School and the University of Minnesota remain committed to our international community and our international students and scholars. Before telling you more about Tim Cofer, on behalf of the Carlson School, I want to thank First Tuesday's partners, our premier sponsor, Tennant Company, and our media sponsor, Minnesota Public Radio. And of course, I want to offer a very special thank you to the many Carlson School of Management and University of Minnesota alumni and supporters who are here today. Thank you for being here. I'd also like to particularly thank my colleague, Andrew Aline, Dean of the College of Science and Engineering, for being here. And as you'll hear today, Tim is a Minnesota native, and we are thrilled to have a few tables of his family and friends with us, including his wife Jody, and his sons Dylan and Austin. I also want to take an opportunity to thank our benefactors who are here today, including the Carlson School Investor Circle members. The Investor Circle is the school's annual giving society. It recognizes the school's most ardent and committed individual supporters. Welcome to you all. So now I want to tell you a little bit about Tim, our featured speaker. Tim was named Chief Executive Officer for Keurig Dr. Pepper 1 year ago this month. He's a seasoned consumer packaged goods executive with more than 30 years of multinational experience in driving growth, leading transformations, and executing significant M&A. Prior to joining KDP in 2023 as Chief Operating Officer, Tim was the CEO of Central Garden and Pet Company, where he oversaw a multi-year period of double-digit revenue and profit growth and a series of strategic acquisitions. Previously, he spent more than 25 years with Mondelez International and its predecessor company, Kraft Foods. It culminated in his role as Executive Vice President and Chief Growth Officer, and earlier he led two of the largest global regions for the company, Europe and Asia, Middle East, Africa. And in addition, he led the global integration of Kraft and Cadbury. Tim has now lived and worked all around the world, but he grew up right here in White Bear Lake, Minnesota. He holds an MBA from the University of Minnesota's Carlson School of Management and a BA in Economics and Political Science from St. Olaf College. As I was preparing for today, I went back and I looked for and I checked out Tim's transcript. Yeah. And it turns out he was a bit of a slacker. He may have frequented too many watering holes at Seven Corners because he was only able to scrape by with a 4.0 GPA. And more seriously, Tim also led his team to the 1992 Consultant of the Project of the Year for their work with 3M Company. So I think we can proudly say that Tim's Carlson School education has really set him up for the successful career that followed from it. So to get us started today, Tim will give a short presentation to share more about his life and career, as well as KDP and the consumer packaged goods industry. Then he's going to sit with a conversation with Chris Farrell, Senior Economics Contributor at Marketplace, America Public Media's nationally syndicated public radio business and economics program. Chris is also a Senior Economics Contributor for Minnesota Public Radio, frequently appearing on NPR News as a contributor and guest host. He's the author of 5 books on personal finance and the economy, and we're pleased to also have Chris with us today. And now, please join me in welcoming Tim to the stage.
Thank you, Dean Prenkert. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dean Prenkert. Good afternoon, everybody. It is great to be back in Minnesota, and it wouldn't be April in Minnesota without a threat of a snowstorm, would it? And so coming from Dallas most recently, it felt quite apropos. You know, a number of months ago when I met with Dean Prankert on this opportunity and this privilege to address this group and be a part of this first Tuesday series, which has been going on, I guess, 3 decades now. We talked about dates that can work and work for Minnesota and my schedule, and we landed on this date. And I remember reaching out to some old friends, some of which are here, some of which I haven't seen in 30 years. And I told them, yeah, I'm going to be at Minnesota on the CEO Speaker Series, and mark your calendar, it's April 1. And they're like, yeah, right. Nice April Fool's joke, buddy, which I think gives you a sense of the confidence some of my old friends have in me. But we all grow and develop. But guys, as the dean said, I wanted to spend just a couple of minutes giving a quick background on me, this great school of Minnesota that we're all a part of in one way or another, a little bit about my career, and then importantly, KDP and this exciting beverage platform. So as you can see on the slide here, and as the dean said, I actually moved to Minnesota in 1974 and spent a good dozen years here in this state. Enjoyed my time here, became a Minnesota sports fan here, Gophers, Vikings, and others. And as the dean said, went to both undergrad and graduate here, importantly at the Carlson School to get my MBA, which was foundational in my career. Since that time, I've been quite a nomad. I've actually lived in 6 countries, 7 states, brought Jody and these 2 boys around the world from Singapore to London, England, Switzerland, a couple of occasions, and had quite an experience. Now live in Dallas, Texas, a lot warmer down there, and that's my 22nd move. So been quite a nomad. I will tell you, CPG is the industry that I had the privilege to spend the first 35 years of my career in, consumer products, a great industry in America, a fabric of the nation type industry. You know, you think about industries and business in the United States, you might think of big legacy businesses like auto industry, steel, et cetera. CPG, consumer products, represent 1 out of every 10 jobs in the United States. It represents 10% of our GDP. And for me, what's been so rewarding is to be a part of brands and products that we all consume on a regular basis and to shape those brands and that innovation. Speaking of brands, I started after getting my MBA here at Carlson School. First job was at Oscar Mayer. I was assistant brand manager, cold cuts, got a couple legacy Oscar Mayer guys in the room with me. And over the last 35 years, have had a privilege to lead some of the most iconic businesses and brands in CPG. Think brands, yes, like Oscar Mayer, had a run on a pizza business that was a lot of fun. It's not delivery, it's DiGiorno. You know, one of the highlights of my career was the immense challenge to lead the Cadbury acquisition and integration. That was a $19 billion acquisition by Kraft Foods of this amazing British Commonwealth chocolate icon called Cadbury. And that was fraught with some challenges, both in terms of, from a business standpoint, synergy and integration, but also culturally. And that was a great learning experience for me. And now, of course, the chance to look after brands like Dr. Pepper, a $5 billion icon in Dr. Pepper and Keurig coffee. And for those that are wondering about that early days in Oscar Mayer, I can confirm I did drive the Wienermobile. And let me tell you, if you're ever behind the wheel of a 26-foot-long hot dog and you see the smiles from ear to ear as you drive down the road, it's an experience like none other, and it's an experience that I truly relish to this day. You see what I did there? Relish? All right, just checking, making sure the audience is engaged. I know we're in lunch. Okay, so let's talk about KDP, Keurig Dr. Pepper. Keurig Dr. Pepper is actually a $15 billion company in terms of sales. At present, if you check your stock ticker, we're over a $45 billion market cap company. We're Fortune 500, we're NASDAQ 100, we're publicly traded. If you aren't a shareholder, I got a tip for you. We have headquarters in Texas and in Boston. As I said, I work out of Texas. 30 manufacturing plants, dozens of warehouses around the country, including one right here in South St. Paul. And I've got a bunch of my colleagues here from Keurig Dr. Pepper today, spent the day yesterday in our South St. Paul warehouse and out at retail. 29,000 employees overall. And I think the biggest point of pride on this page is our recognition in the industry. Most admired company, most respected company, most responsible company. Last year we were awarded with 31 different distinctions from institutions like you see Fortune, Time, Newsweek, et cetera, 11 of which were new. So we're really building a reputation as a beverage industry. I told you my first job out of Carlson School was in marketing, so I'm a marketer at heart, but been a general manager the last 10 or 20 years. We're blessed with a portfolio of beverage icons. You look at this chart, we have $4 billion plus brands, namesake Dr. Pepper, namesake Keurig, but also Canada Dry's more than $1 billion, and Mott's, leading apple juice and applesauce over $1 billion. You see $500 million brands. Think A&W, think 7-Up, Green Mountain. Our newest acquisition, biggest acquisition in company history that I led last fall, closed on 12/31 of 24, is Ghost, one of the fastest growing energy drinks in the US. And then you see plenty of other $100 million brands, so a great portfolio. As the dean said, when I took this job 18 months ago, I really focused in the first few months on two things. One, learning the business, being out with the people, with our teams, at retail, with our customers to learn the business. And two, formulate the strategy to guide the next chapter of value creation at KDP. KDP is a story of a merger back in 2018. Legacy Green Mountain, Keurig Green Mountain, a coffee company. Legacy Dr. Pepper Snapple Group, a cold beverage company. Two companies come together in 2018. Over those next 6 years, created a lot of shareholder value for all of our shareholders. $600 million in synergy, strong growth rate, 6% sales growth, 11% EPS growth. The question when I became CEO was, okay, what's the next act? Where are you taking it? What's this next chapter of value creation going to look like? And we co-created this with some of the colleagues even in this room, which is, I'm a big fan of a simple, compelling, cogent strategy to act as a roadmap for all of our colleagues. And that's what you see here. Perhaps Chris and I will unpack some of this, but it's everything from our consumer obsession to amplifying our route to market advantage. Route to market distribution capability in beverages is a critical asset and a scarce asset. We are one of only 3 nationally available coast-to-coast distributors of beverage in the United States. That's something we plan to build on. The other, I think, call out of this slide is culture. Culture for me over 35 years is the least externally recognizable element of business success, and yet arguably the most critical. And at KDP, we pride ourselves with one word, and that's challenger. We have a challenger mindset. We bring a challenger view to every competitive environment that we're in. So that means we're disruptive. That means we play on offense. And that means we're here to challenge convention. So that's our strategy on one page. May talk more about it. I was really pleased in South St. Paul yesterday at the warehouse to see even this strategy up on the wall. So it's obviously taking hold. If you think about a strategy, it's only good as the execution, and it's only as good as the proof points. And last year, we had a lot to be proud of on these strategies. Think innovation, consumer obsession. Single largest grossing innovation in carbonated soft drink sodas last year was Canada Dry Fruit Splash. America's leading ginger ale, now with a splash of real cherry juice. The huge breakout hit was Dr. Pepper Creamy Coconut, little thing called dirty soda, bit of a trend, especially among young people, capitalized on that. I already mentioned we're reshaping our portfolio, huge acquisition in Ghost, spent over $1 billion for the first tranche of that brand last year. That's big new growth vertical for this company. And then finally, route to market advantage, investing in our route to market, buying up new territories, building in new warehouses, importantly, building digital capability. And then last slide, and then I'll have the privilege of welcoming up Chris to the stage, is just a sneak peek on innovation for this year. And I will say at the back end of the room are a couple of clandestine coolers. Feel free to treat yourself on the way out to some of these fine products. And more importantly, go to your local store and buy some after this meeting. But here's a sneak peek under the tent. The big news this year from the $5 billion Dr. Pepper brand is none other than Blackberry. And if you haven't tried it, please do. Zero sugar formula is fantastic. No calories, no sugar. Rich, delicious, ripe taste of blackberry with the unmistakable 23 flavors of Dr. Pepper. Go for that one. All right. Another one in our Keurig machines is we're bringing in refreshers. Anyone get refreshers at a Starbucks or something? That's quite a trend these days at away-from-home coffee shops. We can do that at the convenience and quality of your home brewer for just cents per cup. RC, not necessarily known as the biggest cola brand, but a bit of a heartland sometimes in the Midwest, and we've launched our first ever zero sugar variety of RC, delicious new cola. A lot of news on our still non-carbonated portfolio. 7-Up, last holiday, we did this cool edition called Shirley Temple. It was a lot of fun. This year, we're following it up with this holiday tradition with mango and peach. And then we've got great innovation on our coffee business, including premium brands like Lavazza, Italy's largest coffee brand out of Torino, through to, I think, a hometown favorite here in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Caribou, where we're the licensed partner of Caribou Keurig K-Cup. So a lot of great news coming this year to keep that growing. With that, as our dean said, it is a pleasure to welcome to stage Chris from NPR.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
I have lots to ask you, but I also want to say there's on your table, there's these QR codes. If you have questions, please put in your questions and they'll gather them and then they'll bring them up to me later on. So we'd love to get your questions. But just off what you were talking about, I'm really curious about innovation in, let's just say, in the soda business. I mean, where does it come from? Now, if you go on TikTok, as you know, there's pickle juice and Dr. Pepper. I'm not trying this, okay?
No?
No, it's not happening here. So how does innovation, I mean, you're a big company, you have 29,000 employees.
Yep.
How do you winnow through the ideas that this is where we're going to put our investment dollars behind?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's CPG, right? Consumer products, and it all starts with the consumer. And so it's that orientation. You saw it on our strategy declaration. We talk about consumer obsession. And so really understanding at an intimate level who your consumer is, what's important in their lives. The real magic in consumer products is when you can connect consumer truths, cultural moments and cultural trends with brand authenticity. And when you can bring all that together in a proposition around innovation, that's where the magic happens. And indeed, to your point on dirty soda, that was it. We spotted the dirty soda trend in kind of late 23. And I don't know if all the audience knows dirty soda, but it's quite a thing, especially among youth. We're the #1 brand on TikTok, obviously a fast and very youth-centric platform. Same on Insta. So you look at that and you see what's going on, which is this combination of different ingredients mixed together at away-from-home soda shops. Then you capitalize on it. So we decided to then change the innovation idea for 24 to creamy coconut, Dr. Pepper creamy coconut. And dirty soda capitalizes off that. There's a little cream, coconut, lime, etc. And it went viral. And you know, when you can touch something like that that's really culturally relevant and connect it with a cool brand like Dr. Pepper, it's lightning in a bottle.
Yeah. So what are you, because you're close to the consumer, so what are you seeing about the consumer now? What is the consumer excited about, or how are you reading the consumer tea leaves?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, I think the American consumer is a bit challenged right now, right? And so obviously we do a ton of analysis to understand, but when you look at low and mid-income consumer in particular, if you take the American landscape and put it in 3 tertiles, that low and mid-income consumer is under pressure and they're feeling it. And even this year, 2025, with some of the inflation concerns, tariffs, et cetera, the stock market, I think there's some pressure. And so what you see there is the opportunity for a company like KDP is to be sure you're serving them around value. And carbonated soft drinks are still a great value in terms of a simple bit of pleasure and enjoyment, caffeine, et cetera. Making sure that our things like what we call price pack architecture, the way we configure multi-pack packages to hit key price points. Shifting to the coffee business, one of the things we did is we took our 12-pack of K-Cups, downsized it to 10 K-Cups. We didn't change the price per pod. The price per pod stayed the same, but that out-of-pocket that she needs to pay obviously came down. So you need to play on value, but I'll tell you, the other side is on premium. Premium continues to be an exciting growth area. So it's, you know, it sounds like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, but they can both exist. The need to play to affordability and value, and the need to create premium, unique experiences that our consumers are willing to pay for.
And so speaking of challenging times, we're getting a big tariff announcement tomorrow. But you know, tariffs have been on, tariffs have been off, tariffs have been on. You have 30 manufacturing locations. So, you know, looking at your strategic plan, looking ahead, how do you navigate during this period of time?
Absolutely. You know, first I'd say we are fortunate as it relates tariff in that the majority of our manufacturing distribution capabilities are in the country of origin. So this is our biggest country, obviously the United States from a business standpoint. Got $1 billion business in Canada, $1 billion business in Mexico. And so what you see is the vast majority of the manufacturing, distribution, kind of the capability build is in those three countries. There is some cross-border activity, some cross-manufacturing in a few places. And of course, there's sourcing of raw materials and components from outside. And so what I'd tell you is we are not immune to the potential tariffs that we're likely to learn a lot more about tomorrow on April 2nd. Our approach has been three things. Number one is obviously get in front of it. Try to anticipate based on reading the tea leaves what they are likely to be, you know, from which country of origin, at what amount, on what goods, and have an understanding of what that cost envelope looks like. Number two is then risk mitigation, right? What can we do to counter that? So where in places can we push back to our supplier? Where can we alternate source? Think about different things. Where can we, you know, on occasions, yes, pricing will be one option in terms of risk mitigation. Passing that price, that inflationary impact onto the consumer. And then three is obviously beyond those levers, just making sure that we've got the holistic approach that still allows us as a publicly traded company to deliver on our guidance, which this year is mid-single digits on the top, high single digits EPS growth. And we're pretty confident with even those changing dynamics that we can deliver on those expectations.
So, you know, with that uncertainty, and then what you're talking about the consumer earlier, how does this impact your thinking about pricing and pricing strategy and higher prices versus volume, for example? I think that's probably a classic in your business. So how is that, how are you thinking about pricing at this point?
You know, if I separate the business, you know, we run what we call a dawn to dusk portfolio. You know, every major beverage category we play in. But if I had to oversimplify, we have a cold business, refreshment beverage, about $10 billion. And we have a hot business, primarily coffee, about $5 billion. General rounding here. So if I split those two apart for your question, I'm going to start with coffee. What you're seeing on coffee, if you follow agri-commodities at all, is you know that commodities like coffee and cocoa are on a significant rise. Coffee has flirted with all-time highs in the last couple of months. So here we're under significant input cost pressure. And we already announced pricing. So I took pricing in January of this year across all of the Keurig K-Cup business. You know, because in the end, we do have, I think, a responsibility to our shareholders to protect our margins and protect our ability to continue to invest in industry-leading disruptive innovation, making the great products our consumers want. So in that case, we actually took pricing, you know, further pricing. And to your point, Chris, no doubt there will be an elasticity impact, a volume trade-off. Okay. But in a high commodity input environment, you're going to take that trade-off, right? You're going to take that pricing, you're going to accept some volume degradation, because in the end, that's going to be best for the bottom line in the near term. On the cold side of the business, we're seeing a relatively more benign environment. Again, pending tomorrow, there could be some aluminum tariffs that we need to look at. Aluminum is obviously a key input cost for us if you think about your favorite beverages in cans. But on that one, we've been able to navigate in a more normal fashion.
Okay, so let's split. So I want to go back to coffee just for a moment, because I learned while I was doing my research that coffee is the #2 drink to water.
True.
In the United States, which I had never known. So when you're looking at coffee and questions about sustainability and innovation, where do you see the Keurig business going?
Well, we have a great business. So, the Keurig business is, called $4.5 billion. We're north of a 30% operating income margin, kind of low 30s OI margin. I think most of these people are in business. So you know what operating income margin is? That's a pretty good margin, especially in food and beverage, I'll tell you. So it's a great business. We're the pioneer in single-serve coffee here in the United States. And at Keurig, we actually manufacture about 80% of all K-Cups that you buy on your shelf. So whether it's our own brands like Green Mountain, the Original Donut Shop, or whether it may be some of our partner brands, think Starbucks, think Dunkin', Caribou locally, those are all manufactured by Keurig. So for starters, it's a great business. To your point, from a consumer behavior standpoint, it's a ubiquitous business. I'm up 5:30 every morning on my second cup of coffee, usually by 6 a.m. I couldn't imagine a day without coffee. It's a wonderful,
this is true,
wonderful ritual. And coffee has really, think about your own behavior, especially if you've got a few years under your belt. Coffee has evolved meaningfully. The specialization of coffee, all the various drinks that one makes, the lattes, the cappuccinos, the macchiatos, etc. It's really quite a artisan, high involvement, personalized category. And for a company like Keurig then, the ability to bring that same coffee shop experience across every brand that you would want in coffee and do it a long drip, black American coffee or a cappuccino or a latte. Now we've launched cold, the first time ever, so we have brewers that make a cold cup of coffee to the touch, like you will have at your away from home. So it's a platform that's rich for innovation, based on consumer. It's a great business. Currently, it's under pressure, to your earlier question on input cost, but it's a business that's great. It's one that's driven by innovation and one we plan to continue to lead in.
And, one of the things people care about a lot, I think the consumer cares a lot, is sustainability. So you have all this little plastic. And so how do you deal with this?
Yeah. So, I'd start by saying, if you saw that strategy page I flashed up there for 1 minute, we feel very passionately about our purpose at Keurig Dr. Pepper. And in 4 words, it's drink well, do good. And it's this notion of, as one of the largest beverage companies in the country, we have a responsibility and we have an opportunity to serve our consumers and help them enjoy their favorite beverages, get a lot of pleasure for it, but at the same time, drive impact. We're about great brands, great experiences, great impact. And we have a big impact that we can play, and it can be favorable and it can be unfavorable. So we take it very seriously. I'll give you a few stats around our commitment specifically to sustainability, which was your question. Number one, fun fact you may not know, our company is actually the single largest buyer of fair trade coffee in the world. You might say, oh, well, I thought that would be maybe a Seattle-based brand, or that might be, Caribou, or that might be Nestle or something. No, it's Keurig Dr. Pepper. We're the largest buyer of fair trade coffee. And because I think that's important for us to invest in, at a slight premium, a sustainable solution. I'm sure, Chris, you're familiar with NPR and the Fair Trade Organization,
yes,
their values, their commitment. So that's important. Specifically on plastic, maybe 2 proof points to share. One is, if you think about our entire ecosystem, from bottles on the refreshment beverage side through to K-Cups, since COVID period, called 2019-2020, we've reduced virgin plastic usage by 15%. And that's principally on the back of 3 of our still brands, Bai, Core, and Snapple, where we've converted all single-serve bottles to recycled PET instead of Virgin's PET. And we will continue on that commitment in terms of expanding that. And then the third thing, and maybe we drill down if you wish on that, is we've previewed and announced a disruptive coffee system that we think will really revolutionize single-serve coffee. And that will actually have a completely plastic-free and aluminum-free pod. And that's exciting news to follow.
That's really cool. Now, I have to bounce around because there are a couple other things that I really want to get to.
Good.
The soda business, it's still a growing business.
Yeah.
And I have to admit that took me by surprise. I mean, it's a mature industry. So why is it still growing?
Yeah, look, carbonated soft drinks, I think two things. One is it continues, back to your opening question, it continues to demonstrate great value to the American consumer. If you think about on a price per ounce basis, yes, that can of your favorite Dr. Pepper is more expensive than it was 5 years or 10 years ago. So is every soda brand. But still on a price per ounce basis, it represents a great value relative to other beverage choices. It gives you, the great taste, the great pleasure you're looking for. It gives you a jolt of caffeine, et cetera. And so if you benchmark it versus others, take energy drinks as one example, you're still on a price per ounce getting a great value. So I think the value proposition is one. And the other is, quite honestly, great companies like KDP and some of our peers have done a great job on innovation, bringing excitement, bringing news, bringing that dirty soda trend to Dr. Pepper. And I think that innovation helps to keep the category vibrant and engaging.
So you mentioned energy drinks and Ghost, the billion-dollar acquisition, and you've dealt a lot with acquisitions.
Yeah.
You mentioned Cadbury, and it seems to me that corporate history is littered with these entrepreneurial companies. They find this niche, they're exciting, they're growing, they get absorbed by the big company, and all that entrepreneurial energy just kind of dissipates. So how do you, when you're dealing with a company like Ghost now, how do you keep them hungry?
Yeah, it's a great question, Chris, and it is critical to that value creation on the other side of the acquisition. And as Chris says, we've all seen it. The industry's littered with stories where it's gone wrong and you've destroyed shareholder value. In the end, it's part art and part science. And, having had the benefit of 3+ decades being involved in acquisitions and integrations, you learn a thing or two over time. There's certainly, a bit of a playbook that one follows, but a big part of it is art. And it's a culture connectivity. Take Ghost. So we bought that last year, wrote $1 billion check. Two great entrepreneurs, fairly young guys, Dan Lorenzo, Ryan Hughes, started this business kind of in their garage. And I was actually with them, Chris, last week in Las Vegas. It's a Las Vegas-based company. And I spent a day with them. And I think that alone is part of the answer to the question. So making sure when you buy something that new member of your team continues to feel special. I mean, the day before we closed that deal on 12/31, these guys, they ran everything, right? It was their business.
Yeah.
Now, we made them a little more wealthy, but now they work for, a large $45 billion market cap company. And so it's this notion of best of both. The reason we bought Ghost is because we love the brand, we love what they've accomplished. We have real conviction in these two guys and their leadership team. We want that to continue. So part of it's the structure. So we purchased only 60% of the company. We kept 40% on the table. There's an earnout over the next 3 years. If they deliver, and they will, and we'll do it together on the back of the KDP capabilities, they have a chance to make quite a bit of money. So there's, capitalism always kicks in. That helps. And then in addition to that, it's the softer stuff, right? It's, again, me last Thursday, spending a day with them and making sure that they understand that they continue to have great freedom within a framework to run their business, drive their brand, continue to build that innovation, while adhering to certain requirements now as a publicly traded company, right, that you have to have.
And then you've mentioned in the past that you'll see the company innovating into health and wellness. So what's attracting you to that segment?
The consumer, right? So it all starts there. And I think you see the better for you trend is probably the biggest trend of my career. You know, I mean, when I started Oscar Mayer 35 years ago, we were talking, right, guys, about better for you and, you know, low fat and all of this. And so the fad may change over the years, the particular complexion of that, but that notion that we all want to live longer and have healthier lives and see the critical role that food and beverage plays on that quest is the mega trend of the last 3 years with different complexions. So for us, from a beverage standpoint, you know, what we like to talk about is this concept of positive hydration. We all got to drink. I mean, it's critical, right? We need, and non-alcoholic, by the way, but enjoy your beer and spirits when you want. But, you know, we all need to drink. In fact, the average American consumer drinks 90 ounces of liquid every day. And the 90 ounces of liquid every day tends to be, you know, over kind of 10 or 11 situations, 8 to 10 ounces each time. And that hasn't changed over the last 3 decades. What has changed is, one, population growth, about 1%, so that throws up about 1% volume. But the complexion of what the American consumer drinks has changed remarkably. Hence, energy drinks. I mean, when I was a kid, you know, there was no energy drink. Energy drink was probably Dr. Pepper, right? Now that's a $23 billion fast-growing vertical. So what you're seeing is trends towards functional efficacy, drinks with protein, drinks with prebiotics, drinks claiming, you know, mental health, drinks that will provide good hydration. And again, for us, a full 60% of our portfolio is what we call positive hydration. That means either no sugar, no calorie, low sugar, low calorie, or a good source of fruit in the case of a Mott's brand, you know, which brings a serving of fruit.
But then you think about, let's just take the last 2 decades, and health and wellness and sugared drinks. You know, that's typically don't go together. But you see this as your growth market.
Well, so as I said, 60%, right? 6 out of 10 of our beverages are actually that low-cal, no-cal, low sugar, no sugar. So that is actually the more vibrant part of our portfolio, going where the consumer's going. This particular beverage I have in my hand, Dr. Pepper Zero Sugar, grew 31% last year. Okay, this is a multi-$100 million expression of Dr. Pepper. By far the fastest growing. Why? The tremendous taste of Dr. Pepper, 0 sugar, 0 calories.
So I want to make a slight shift now. And so you lived in 6 countries.
Yeah.
And you lived and worked in 6 countries. So what did that international experience do for you in your career and the way that you approach work in the workplace?
Yeah, tremendous experience. You know, highly recommend. It's not for everyone. It has its drawbacks too, right? Life's about trade-offs. But you know, for me, it was an incredible learning experience. The additional challenge and stimulation of working outside your home country, it is kind of another level. You know, we all talk about, and at KDP and me personally, have great sense of value in the concept of diversity. When you work, like when I looked after the European business of the prior company, had a leadership team of 16 individuals. I was the only American, on the leadership team. The vast majority of the people I worked with every day, were non-American. Same when I went to Singapore and Asia. I was working with Chinese and Indian and Indonesian, Australian, et cetera. So business is hard and challenging when you do it in a cross-cultural context. I do think you kind of have to work that much harder, because even some of the things around consumer orientation, where I can identify in this country as an American on, Americana, when you're trying to sell, a opening price point cookie brand in Jakarta, Indonesia, you got to work a lot harder on that consumer centrism. And so it's about learning, right? It broadens your perspectives. It creates a greater challenge. I think it's more rewarding too, right? It's just that much more rewarding to have those cross-cultural experiences. And of course, on a personal level, got to go with my wife and 2 kids and travel the world and, their education abroad and, create that experience for the family as well.
So, this has been a fascinating discussion and the consumer packaged goods industry. But I don't think any 6 or 7-year-old says, hey, I want to go into the consumer packaged goods industry. That's my ambition.
Yeah.
So how did you land on this industry to devote your career to?
Yeah, well, I started, my first job in college was looking at, I was in a field marketing research agency, a little one here in Minneapolis. And I was doing surveys in store. I would go into store and do like cereal aisle checks for General Mills. This is largely before computers. So I literally had a clipboard. And it was like, how many facings of Cheerios and at what price point? And you'd give that. And that was the kind of the early bug to say, boy, this is fascinating. And I'm doing kind of hourly work, being paid $2.85 to check the cereal aisle. But I wonder what they're doing on the other side when they get this data, right? What are the actions that they're taking? And it was clear to me if I wanted to be serious in this, I needed a master's, or I thought that would do it. And so, of course, I come to this great university in Minnesota for my master's. And, that really set the stage. Then I had an internship at a food company while I was getting my master's here. Had the great consulting project at the Carlson School with 3M Company. But I began to cement my love for this. And I think back to your question, it's because it's very tangible. What we do every day at a company like KDP, you see it right away. I mean, it's Dr. Pepper, it's 7-Up, it's A&W, it's Snapple, it's Keurig Coffee. You talk to your friends about it. It's right there at the store. Your friends post about it. So it's a very approachable, everyday, fun, I think, meaningful business, which is also, can be very rewarding. And the impact it has, as I shared on the earlier slide, 1 out of 10 jobs is in the industry. So it's a meaningful impact to the economy.
And in the competition for talent.
Yes.
How do you draw people into the industry? How do you bring people into your company?
Yeah. I said earlier, it's all about people. As everyone knows in this room, it is all about people. Business success is about people. And getting the best people that have the right capabilities, the right values, the right mindset of the agenda that you want to drive is absolutely critical. So we invest a lot of time in this, in our people agenda. The war for talent is very real. In our industry, in beverage industry, there are other great companies. And you do see some cross-pollination between the companies. But I think, what we've got going for us is our namesake. We've got great brands. Everybody knows them. They want to be a part of it. And once you get inside our 4 walls, I think it's the culture that keeps them here. The career opportunities and, the careers that they can build here really keeps them. I'd say the other thing increasingly is, we, especially at a frontline basis, I was with our colleagues, they're at this table here up front in South St. Paul. We use, at a frontline level, we use almost exclusive, digital recruiting tools now. There's very little, kind of human interaction. We talked about that at lunch, right, yesterday. And so there's an efficiency that can come, especially at a frontline basis. You get more involved white-collar recruiting. It gets a little bit more hands-on.
So one of the things that I found remarkable, which when we met over Zoom, I believe, a couple of weeks ago, which I did not really realize, that Dr. Pepper's number 2 in the soda category. So I'm fascinated, how do you maintain the image of being the challenger when you're number 2, which is pretty big?
Yeah, it is big. We feel good about that, don't we? Last summer was a real milestone where Dr. Pepper crossed the threshold above what previously was the number 2 soda brand in the U.S. That was years, if not decades, in the making. And really, it's on the back of the 29,000 men and women that get up every day and go to work for Keurig Dr. Pepper. But it's around, great innovation, tremendous marketing on this brand, and outstanding customer relationships and route to market strength, including our DSD.
So route to market is when I go into the gas station and go get
your favorite Dr. Pepper,
okay.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
That's route to market strength. And again, in beverage in particular, that route to market is critical, right? Having that beverage at your local convenience store, gas station, Cub Foods, Walmart, wherever you may shop here in the Twin Cities, that is critical. And that final moment of truth and being available with the right assortment, the right display activity, the right cooler, that's winning. And we are one of only 3 national coast-to-coast DSD, direct store delivery companies. There's a red company that has it, a blue company, and then Dr. Pepper. And so that's a real strength of ours that allows us to continue to grow that business. And, we're not done. We've got big ambitions on Dr. Pepper, but, broadly across our portfolio to continue to grow.
So speaking of the portfolio continuing to grow, one of the questions from the audience is, where do you see the energy drink category going in the next few years?
Energy is absolutely one of the fastest growing categories in beverage in the United States. Energy is a $23 billion category, energy drinks. It was started decades ago largely by Red Bull. There's one other big player in Monster. Those are the 2 big players. After that, it's quite a scrum right now. And so you see what we've done at KDP. The approach that we've taken, I think will be a winning approach, is really a portfolio approach. So we now have, if you go back just 3 years ago, KDP had a 0 share in energy. We were not participating in a $23 billion vertical, growing at a 9% CAGR, almost a double-digit growth rate. Fast forward to today, we are a 6.5 share. So we've gone from 0 to 6.5. And I'm on public record, and I'll say it again today, I think we'll be a double-digit share here in the next couple of years. And that's on the back of a winning portfolio. C4, a strong performance fitness energy brand. Ghost, our newest acquisition, a lifestyle Genzennial, great zero sugar flavor, fun brand. Bloom, which I saw everywhere in stores yesterday. Great job, KDP sales. Bloom is a female-forward, female-founded brand that is really taking the world by storm. Big at Target. I think Target, Andrew, was that's where it kind of all started last year. So Target got behind it in a big way. And now we're taking it nationally. And then Black Rifle, that's a coffee brand, veteran-founded, kind of unapologetically American. So we've assembled a portfolio in the last 2 years that can participate in it. It's a great category. It's one where structurally there's still a lot of tailwinds. Household penetration is well below CSDs. It serves a critical need, especially among youth, for energy and alertness. And there's still a lot of category development yet to be had. Specialized brands, unique targets, channel diversity, think beyond your local convenience store. So we're bullish on energy, and that's why we made the big investment.
So in this question, I think follows up, you've held leadership roles at multiple major consumer good companies. What leadership traits have been most critical in navigating change and driving growth across organizations, which is just what you were talking about with the energy drink category?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but what are the leadership traits that will help drive that?
Yeah. I think agility and learning agility is foundational. You know, the world's changing at a ever faster pace, technology, culture, business, competitive dynamics, regulatory dynamics. And so being agile and being on your toes at all times, having a continuous learning orientation is, I think, what separates, certainly as I look at up and coming talent, you know, now at KDP, and what separates a really good leader and performer from a spectacular one often comes down to their learning agility and their ability to take learning on the fly and apply it with great judgment in new circumstances and new territories. Because it's ever evolving, but being able to draw upon that and then apply it in a successful way is a real differentiator.
And so with 29,000 employees,
Yes.
this learning, this training,
Yeah.
I mean, how deep does that go in the organization? I mean, how much part of it, when you're talking about your culture, is this part of the culture of the organization?
Yeah, so when I think about training and development, over the years, I do think there's a role for foundational, digitally led now, but kind of old school classroom, textbook, digitally enabled training. There's a role for that, and we have that at KDP, as do a lot of great large companies, right? We have an entire portal that all of our colleagues can access, that whatever you want to learn about, we've got the training, we've got connections with kind of best in class modules that you can learn at your own pace. So if you want to learn more about AI, or you want to learn more about supply and demand forecasting, or you want to learn whatever you want to learn about, you can go in your spare time, on the weekend, perhaps on the job, you can go and learn about that. But the point is, I'm a bigger believer that the greatest learning is on-the-job training, right? Is in the seat, being exposed to new situations and new challenges, and building a career where one is not just myopic in their kind of career ambition and career approach, and can learn as much as one can by jumping into new categories, new brands, new functions, new territories, geographic territories, et cetera. That's where you get the most learning.
And you mentioned AI. Is it having a practical impact on your business today?
Absolutely, yes. And it's critical for the future. And I had the privilege to talk to about 60 of your finest Carlson School students, Dean Prenkert, last hour, and I got a similar question. And actually the student said, do you view it more as a threat or an opportunity? And clearly an opportunity for us. It all starts, and we've been putting a lot of focus in the last year or so since I joined, it starts with great data, right? So you need great, clean, synergistic data across all of your data and systems platform.
Because you have a lot of data flowing in. I mean,
ridiculous
yeah.
amount of data. More data than we know what to do with, quite honestly. And it's got to be clean and coherent from both a systems and a connectivity standpoint, because that is the data lake or data ocean upon which you can then apply the cutting edge tools and capabilities, ML and AI. If I gave just a couple of quick examples of how we're starting to use AI and where I feel good about it. I mean, one is on supply chain. So think end to end, from buying the right raw materials, be it the green coffee bean from the equatorial crop, through to sugar or plastics, all the way through to our manufacturing, the right supply and demand forecasting, then through to the last mile distribution. The ability to connect that, fully digitize that supply chain, and get it down to a science which is far less labor intensive. It's not about old school spreadsheets. It's not about hundreds of man hours, but it can be AI enabled with, over time, that repeated model, great predictive accuracy that can transform the efficiency of a supply chain. The other example I'd give you is on marketing and consumer. From a marketing and consumer standpoint, I mean, it is transformational. So I started marketing, 30 plus years ago, old school, 30-second television spot on Seinfeld and, drop the Sunday FSI, if you know what that means. Those days are over, right? And so the ability to now have incredible precision marketing, all digitally led, consumer targeting, understanding the consumer at a very intimate level. Anonymous, of course, but very personalized, right? What are your hobbies? Where do you shop? And then do full funnel, closed loop marketing, connected all the way through. So I understand that this young lady is a Golden Gophers fan. She holidays in the Brainerd Lakes. I know this from her social footprint. Of course, I don't know her name, but I know that consumer profile. What are her passion points? Where does she shop? You can have all of that now, and now you can get very predictive on people like that tend to do the following. And that informs then what ads you serve, where they're served, right, with what content. And then AI, of course, transforms creative content, right? You've seen many other brands go public with it. We're beginning to experiment with our own AI-enabled creative content engine, which now, I mean, content is king out there. And so if you can do a rapid cycle content creation targeted to the right consumer, the chance for that ROI on your marketing spend to go up gets much higher. So it's a big opportunity, and it's alive and well, but obviously will continue to evolve.
And so we only have 1 minute left.
Okay.
And so my last question, because the Carlson School for the graduates, if you were their mentor, what do you want them to think about? What is your parting thought to the graduate students as they're about to launch their careers?
Yeah. Number one, you made a great choice. Coming to Carlson School, right? Great choice. Go Gophers, right? And I say that with the full Minnesota accent. Go Gophers. But beyond that, Chris, I would say get comfortable out of your comfort zone. Life's an amazing thing. A career is an amazing thing. And get comfortable stretching yourself. You are going to get the most reward in your career if you're willing to step outside safety and security. And so, go for it. Go for those new experiences. Go for that cross-cultural experience if it comes up. My first international experience, I actually raised my hand. They didn't come to me. I said, I see an opportunity. Would you send me to Europe? And that was the first of 4 European stints, over time. So you got to go for things. I think, as I've said before, value is serious value, be it shareholder value or career value, is rarely created by playing it safe, by playing it on defense. You got to play offense. You got to go for it. You got to get comfortable out of that comfort zone. And I think when you do, it becomes really rewarding.
Well, thank you very much. I could ask you a lot more questions, but I think the tyranny of the clock has intervened.
I got it.
Thank you very much.
Chris.
Thank you. That's great.
Well, I want to thank Tim and Chris for a wonderful conversation. If you're like me, you've got that little buzz from your caffeine. You've learned a whole bunch. I hope you're energized for the rest of your day. I want to thank you for joining us here today. And I want to invite you to gather back here in June for our next First Tuesday. That's going to feature a conversation with Christy Sovereign, the CEO of the Special Olympics, which is in the Twin Cities and will be on the campus of the University of Minnesota in 2026. Unfortunately, our Target CEO, Brian Cornell, had to reschedule, but we are so excited to have this conversation with Christy to discuss this historic moment in Special Olympics and in our community. So I hope you all enjoy the rest of the day, and we'll see you back here in June. Thank you.